Hey everyone, there Thinny, there Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it is time for a review of the new Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds album, Ghosteen. This is the newest record from legendary singer and songwriter Nick Cave and his band, The Bad Seeds, who have spent this decade sounding a lot more mellow than bad with records like Push the Sky Away, as well as Skeleton Tree, and now Ghosteen. All three of these albums essentially accounting for some of the most ambient, moody, and low-key records in the entire Nick Cave discography. And for me, that's meant a lot of highs and a lot of lows. While I wasn't crazy about Push the Sky Away, I did love the profoundly dark and mournful tone of Skeleton Tree. And Ghosteen is essentially the third and final installment in this very melancholic trilogy. Now, of course, I can't say that I was surprised to hear that Ghosteen was equally as low-key as its predecessors, especially since this album comes well after the sudden passing of Nick Cave's son. And Nick spends quite a bit of time meditating on exactly that. I mean, he is essentially the Ghosteen the album is titled after. If anything is surprising about this album, though, it is the very lush and flowery cover, depicting this idyllic green garden with flamingos and a horse and all of these flowers. It's beautiful, it's inviting, it looks like something that would be on the cover of a book of fables. And Nick uses exactly that iconography in his lyrics to explore his grief. Whether he's referencing kings and queens on the opening spinning song, or on this collection of lyrics from the title track. The three bears watch the TV. They age a lifetime. Oh Lord. Mama Bear holds the remote. Papa Bear, he just floats, and Baby Bear has gone to the moon in a boat. These are not necessarily themes and aesthetics that I typically associate with a Nick Cave album. That's not necessarily a bad thing either. I think a lot of the writing on this thing is a welcome change of pace for Nick. But I do think there are some elements of the music, of the instrumentation, that doesn't fully line up. In fact, Ghosteen is like listening to two albums within one album. And I don't just mean by virtue of this thing being pretty much a double or a two-part album with a lot of these short, moody vignettes kicking off the first portion, and then we get these longer, monstrous 10-minute plus cuts in the second half. No, there's also the case of the instrumental tone, the instrumental palettes of this project switching up and not, I guess, cohesively flowing in a way I care for that much. It's either I'm listening to Nick Cave totally broken up over these ornately arranged, beautiful, rich, organic instrumentals with an orchestral edge. They are very weepy and occasionally cinematic, so we have that, or we're getting these long stretches of time where Nick is crooning over these minimal beds of synthesizers. Now, sometimes these styles overlap, and pretty creatively I might add, like on the track Galleon Ship, which transitions from these droning, very simple synth leads to this gorgeous rush of strings that is really one of the prettiest moments on the entire project. But not every synth-based track here meets that same glorious finish, nor is every synth-backed song on this record topped with the same quality poetry. I'm also left wondering who exactly programmed these synthesizers, because the sounds they're generating are not really all that great or immersive or flavorful. Much of the time the synths on this thing sound very rudimentary, clunky, awkward, tinny, generic. I would say they ruin the moods of these tracks more than they enhance them most of the time. And as long as we're talking about the sound of Ghosteen, this record is way too compressed for an album that is this quiet. The whole thing just feels artificially loud, and it's especially distracting considering how gentle the performances come off. Plus, there's at least a few tracks here, mostly Ghosteen Speaks as well as Leviathan, where I find the compositions to be very banal and repetitive. I get that this record is mostly about just kind of creating an instrumental vibe for Nick to just do his thing vocally and lyrically on top of. Again, these tracks are very much vignettes, motifs, meditations, extended quite a bit though. I like a good record you can really marinate in. The issue is I just don't really want to marinate in the sounds that Nick and his band are generating here. I just don't find the generic synth passages and occasionally sterile strings to be all that intriguing. Now, look, this is not the case for every track, and if there is a major saving grace to pretty much every song here, it is Nick's poetry, it is Nick's singing. These characteristics are really what make the sadness, the potent sadness of this record translate so clearly, especially on the opener, especially on the whimpering, eerie vocals in the second half of Hollywood, especially as on the track Waiting for You, Nick's voice cracks like really hard as he is singing waiting for you, waiting for you, waiting for you, making it easily one of the most powerful vocal performances of the year, just from an emotional standpoint. Also on this project, there are plenty of moments where Nick's words reach poetic genius, like on the track Sun Forest, which features all of this very surreal and unsettling imagery of children climbing up and up and up. It's profoundly chilling, and one of the few moments on this record where Nick's voice hits that very grim, stern tone that he's known for. The title track, which works in multiple phases, has this amazing build of strings around the midpoint, which is enhanced with all these pianos and group vocalists. It's grand. It's gorgeous. It's a high point on the album. So there are certainly things I appreciate about this record, and I think at the end of the day, I came out enjoying most of it. I just don't perceive it to be as one of Nick's best, though. Is it one of my favorite sounding Nick Cave albums? Not really. Do I think it's one of his best composed? Do I think it's the most focused on the concept at hand? Not necessarily. But from the standpoint of the vocals, the lyrics, as well as some of the narratives coming out of this thing, it's easily one of Nick Cave's best. So if you're someone who's more attracted to those elements of music and songwriting, I highly recommend this record. So it's certainly likable. I see why people are more into it than I am. And regardless of whether or not this is one of my favorites of Nick Cave's, I am glad that he put out this record and was bold enough to share the turmoil he's been going through so earnestly. Feeling a decent 2 strong 7 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Nick Cave, forever.